confronted by people asking me, why is the medical approach allowed to continue, and why don't doctors know more or do more? Well, sadly, it comes down to market forces and economics. Whilst we're led to believe that the medical establishment and their colleagues in the pharmaceutical industry have a common goal to help people achieve optimal health, sadly, this isn't the case. I'm not for 1 second suggesting that people working in these industries are bad or consciously doing harm. I am aware that in some circumstances they do amazing things. However, money talks. What you may or may not be aware of is that with their huge financial clout, the pharmaceutical industry has a lot of influence in several sectors. Firstly, they heavily subsidize the education of medical doctors and in return have almost complete control over the curriculum. Pharmaceutical companies also have a major influence over the organizations that are supposed to regulate them. I'll put a link in the show notes of a table that displays how much funding for pharmaceutical regulators comes from the very companies that they're supposed to regulate in each country. If you look at the table, in the case of Australia, this is as much as 96% of their funding comes from the pharmaceutical industry. So I think it would be naive to think that these companies invest that much money without expecting some kind of return on their investment. Some might even suggest that this is a case of the fox guarding the chicken coop. Sadly, corruption is rife when it comes to the pharmaceutical regulation. There is a constant revolving door of regulators authorizing products who then join the companies standing to make billions from the products they approved, and often without proper safety testing, but with the reward of a multi-million-dollar salary. Through the lobbying of government officials and politicians, pharmaceutical companies have a huge influence over government policies to maximize their profits. According to Statista, in 2022, the pharmaceutical industry gave $306 million to US politicians alone, which is not a bad gig if you're a US politician without ethics or morals. In addition, pharmaceutical companies and their government agency partners control research funding. This means that research is only performed in order to make their products look good and further their business interests and profit margins. This was illustrated very well in Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci. Having performed a lot of research on acne, I've discovered that much research is performed on medical products. Whilst there are some research papers on nutrition and acne, there is little profit to be made from nutritional advice. And due to the huge expense of research, it means that there is no profit to be made. The research in this area is therefore relatively limited. I also noticed that, as is the case with most research, studies performed on acne are rarely, if ever, longer than 6 to 12 weeks. My own experience, suffering from acne and using pharmaceutical products is that I achieved a short-term reduction in symptoms, but in the long term, they made my acne worse. A research paper might suggest that a particular product is effective. However, if the study was followed up at 1, 5, or 10-year intervals, chances are there would be a completely different outcome. Very sadly, our medical pharmaceutical industry, first and foremost, has a responsibility to its shareholders. The shareholders of any business are there to make money. That's what a commercial enterprise does, or it would be a charity. So what we have is a medical system whose priority is to make as much profit as possible and continue to increase the growth of their profits year on year. What we do not have is a medical system that prioritizes the health outcomes of its patients. The pharmaceutical industry sees you as a consumer. As an industry that exists to make as much money as possible, prolonged illnesses and diseases are how they make their money. This means that if they can keep you in a state of dis-ease, they can continue to make money from you. The longer you have acne and the more you try their products, the more money they make. If you completely cure your acne, you are no longer profitable to them. What you might also find interesting is that the pharmaceutical companies have received the largest criminal fines in history, adding up to several billions of dollars for making misleading claims about their products' efficacy and safety, for fraud, and for bribing medical doctors, to name but a few infractions. These companies are so rich and powerful that they can put these huge fines down to marketing costs and still make huge profits. I previously mentioned that the pharmaceutical companies have great influence over the curriculum of medical degrees. Well, a large portion of medical training includes the study of symptomology and pharmacology. Doctors are trained that if they see a certain symptom, there are options as to which pharmaceutical interventions they might use to treat the symptom. The problem with this approach is it encourages dependence on medication and does not attempt to deal with the causes of the dis-ease in the first place. If you present with acne, you might be offered antibiotics or benzoyl peroxide cream for your acne, but that does not deal with the cause. Even if the treatment works in the long term, which is unlikely, you are likely to suffer negative side effects and be reliant on these products for the rest of your life, along with other pharmaceutical products prescribed to deal with the side effects of the acne medications. What this does is create great repeat business for the companies making the products without helping you overcome your acne in the long term. Now, I do have sympathy for medical doctors. I believe that most of them are genuinely trying to help, and there are a small minority of fantastic doctors who go way beyond their training to provide a highly effective service. Sadly, for most doctors, their training has let them down. When speaking to several doctors in recent years, they tell me that in their 7 years of medical school, they receive between 0 and 4 hours of nutrition training. This might be why the UK's National Health Service still believes that there is no link between diet and acne, and why they don't really know how to treat patients with acne with any great success.